Good evening.
And welcome to another episode of the Diaspod.
It's John and Tenji, ladies and gentlemen. I hope our voices find you well and glad and happy and in full joy.
Oh, we are spreading joy in this
We
episode.
are spreading joy. Maybe not spreading joy necessarily, but
We're wishing people joy.
yeah, we are wishing you joy. Because joy can only be given, so it means more for you and less for us, so we don't want that.
They say joy comes in the morning. But we're recording this in the evening, so we're still sending the morning joy.
We're still, if at all you did not have any joy in the morning, you call them late bloomer. Late bloomers, we're sending it to you right now. It's never too late.
We're sending it to you whatever time you're listening to this podcast.
True. Good evening. How are you doing?
I've been better.
Oh, no, you haven't.
No, that's why I'm saying I have been better than how I am.
In this moment. Okay.
Yeah. So I've been better. How are you?
I'm good. It's just, Norwegian weather. You just need to adapt. There's been a lot of snow this past couple of days, so it's quite messy outside. And for us who work from outside, it's not such a good thing. But you can't. What do people say? If you've experienced something, you can't complain over the same problem you have every year. Like the weather is always going to be there. So
Oh yeah, like now we complaining about the weather is a little bit useless.
yeah, exactly. But aside from that, I'm good. I'm good, really. I can't think of anything to complain about, to klage about. Is it klage?
Yes,
it's klage, right?
It's klage.
Getting my nosh right. So what are we talking today? It's good nowadays. I always just jump into what are we talking about today, because you already know the topic.
Oh yeah.
How nice.
Oh, am I the one introducing the topic today?
Yeah, you're actually the one introducing the topic. You just need to say the topic. Nothing more.
Nothing fancy. I don't need to be
Nothing
dramatic about it. I'm here now trying to see that. Remember the topic. I did see it. I did glance at it, and I was like, interesting. I think our topic is talking about culture in relationships, bringing culture in relationships.
Exactly. Right on point. So I just wanted us to talk about like how culture affects relationships.
Okay.
Was it today when we were watching that Norwegian series?
Yeah.
Norskish?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's sort of where the idea came from. I realized it's a big thing. Not realizing, but it just, when I was watching that, I was like, this is, one of those things that people rarely talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, culture usually comes, into discussion when you're like dealing with like interracial couples, for instance. Yeah, but if you come to think of it, like it affects every relationship. Like, regardless of whether you are, like you and me, for instance, we come from the same country, so somebody would probably go like, oh, you're the same. Everything about you guys is the same culturally. But there are those bits and pieces that we get to experience, like you and me get to feel, that is probably invisible to the outside world. So I just thought we could, talk about the most visible things that you have seen with other relationships, your relationships, and just share our experiences like that. Yeah.
Well, to begin unpacking the topic, you're right. Culture is something that just doesn't affect people who would seem to come from like different countries or have different ratios, different races, and in interracial relationships. But it happens also in terms of different ethnic groups,
Ethnic
or
groups. Yeah.
different tribes, even if you're from the same country. And of course, also, culture is a very diverse topic or subject. So it's not just, the language you speak, but even mannerisms come into play here. You and me might have been raised, for example, if we grew up in the same town, even in the same neighborhood, but would have still been raised different ways.
Yeah.
And would have different cultures on how we perceive certain things, and all of that. So culture encompasses all of that. And when it comes to relationships, maybe it should be one of those things that are on your I don't know what you call that list. The list of the traits that you'd like in your partner.
Exactly.
I think maybe it is. People call it I want somebody who's cultured. But then what does that actually even mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like what is cultured, right? It's not
Yeah.
like something that's defined and going like, oh, a cultured person is looks like this or acts like this.
Yeah.
It's always based on like an individual's description.
Yeah, because some people take culture to mean family values or gender roles and the languages and all of that. But I feel it shouldn't be ignored that even the mannerisms, I don't know if you'd call it somebody's personality, but the things that they would swear by or the things that they live by, that is their culture. That is something that they do maybe every day, maybe not.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are things that should be cultured in. Don't just think of it as oh yeah, I want a person from this tribe or this race or this country and whatever because I like their culture. But then does that encompass just their customs and traditions, or it also encompasses the small mannerisms, the things that they believe in, the things that they might persuade you to join and all those things. Looking at my relationships, I don't know. I don't think culture was the first thing that came to mind getting into a relationship. But then when you get to learn more of the person, or you get to see more of what their life is like, then it goes okay, maybe no, I don't fit
Maybe
in
it's not.
here.
This is not working.
Yeah. I have had those circumstances, and there's circumstance of our relationship of where oh yeah, we are similar, but you can see the differences of oh yeah, you would do it this way and I would do it this way. Yeah.
Um, there's of course, people walk into, whether it's a relationship or just as an individual, the way you are, you have your your own way of doing things, right? That's basically what encompasses culture.
Yeah.
But do you think people can actually walk into relationships, for instance, with ability to adjust? Because I know culture in itself, right? The way you act. You walk into a relationship, and just as you've said, there are people that you met that were sort of different. I'm pretty sure you did class somewhere where you went like, no, I wouldn't want, person that I'm dating doing this or acting this way. Did you at any point ever think, maybe, somewhere along the the course of the relationship, they'll be able to adjust, or you'll be able to share one or two words with them and go like, I don't really like this? Or, did you sort of weigh the relationship and go like, this is going to take a lot of work? And
I would say that first of all, it's very hard to change people if they don't want to change themselves. I think that's something that I have learned across living in the world. Yeah, and I have, of course, encountered, as I said, where we just didn't agree. And I think when you start dating somebody, it's so nice when you're starting to get to know each other. We share mostly hopes and dreams instead of like who we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like just the good side.
Yeah, we share more stuff. Oh yeah, I like this and I like this and oh yeah, I also like. It's like you go like, oh yeah, I like movies, and you're like, oh yeah, I like
I
movies
like
too. But
movies
then when you
too.
kind of like come together and go like, okay, let's go see a movie together.
Let's pick a movie.
And this one is like, but I want to see something where they're killing each other, and I'll be like, but I want to see a fairy tale, and then you see the small clashes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like a small example to like bigger issues. I once dated somebody who, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this here, but
I hope they're not listening.
it would be weird if they were listening. But I once dated somebody who had really strong beliefs in how I should act or what is like expected of me because I'm in a relationship with them.
Yeah.
And this is of course I get it when you're in a relationship you have to like act a certain way. Maybe I don't know if act a certain way is the right way to put it, but what I mean is that they expected me to do things that like how do I put this? Like more of like because we are in a relationship, I should do things that only reflect good on them, but not on our relationship. You know what I mean?
Okay, so it's almost as if yeah, but I do get what you mean. Like how you act sort of
Yeah, like
affected their reputation.
yes, like their upholding their reputation mattered more. So everywhere that I went to, everything that I did, I had to keep in mind that it's for the benefit of this person.
That's interesting.
and I get where there's a thin line there because I would have like adjusted if it was like, oh, we're in a relationships now, so we're going to carry ourselves like this to portray like our relationship. But then it was like, oh yeah, you're not your own person anymore now because you're in a relationship. You have to make sure that you always paint me in a good light, and that I didn't agree with that.
Yes, I get. Yeah, it just you mentioning that sort of brings me to like what I noticed, not with people that I dated, of course, but I noticed like religion, for instance, was something big, and it's similar to what you've spoken of. I don't know how much of religion was into that situation that you were in, but I've seen a lot of people step into relationships with this definition of how a good relationship should be according to religious beliefs. And of course, in as much as we are all Christians where we come from, like in Zambia, for instance, there's, this umbrella religion of Christianity. There are different denominations like within, right?
True.
Yeah. So if you're dating somebody from a certain denomination, they have their own values and they have their own way of doing things in relationships. And so I've seen like friction arise in relationships where you have somebody from a different church meet another person, like everything between them is perfect, but then it's just that in a relationship I'm supposed to date somebody from my church.
Oh yeah.
So regardless of how good this relationship is, as long as you do not come to my church, it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
So I don't know what my point is, but I do that experience that you just had sort of came up.
Oh yeah, in terms of like religion.
In terms of religion. But it's interesting. I've never actually heard that one before. That was pretty serious.
It was. It really was.
That was pretty serious.
Yeah. So it's these small things that I think you asked like, is it possible to like change? Yeah. So it's the same thing as just the example you gave of religion. I don't think I've personally experienced this of having to like follow somebody's religion or like switch religions. But from like hearing other people's stories, this is something that is practically really serious, where you might not switch religions, but just as you said, you grew up in a different denomination. For example, the Christianity that we have in Zambia, there are so many different denominations.
So many.
I grew up traditional UCZ, and other people have grown up traditionally Catholic, traditionally Methodist, traditionally Pentecostal, traditionally whatever it is.
So many.
So the intersections, and when you get into a relationship, and especially if you plan for it to be like a long-term relationship, it is that people have to choose, because you both can't just be going separate ways. You have to choose, and I don't know where we draw the line, because when you're in a relationship, a lot of compromising happens. I want to say needs to be done, but it doesn't necessarily need to be done, but it happens kind of like because you're trying to mesh your lives together. So compromising is kind of like inevitable.
Yeah.
So I've forgotten where I was going with this.
But what I wanted to say is totally different. But
okay, let me try and find like where the thought was going.
You give me a sign.
Yeah, like I was just gonna say, like I was gonna ask you actually, like, do you think like the compromising thing, there's like a fine line between like compromising maybe and adopting somebody's culture? Could you say that there's a fine line between like, oh, I'm compromising because, we're meshing our lives together in this relationship, or I am just, adopting this person's culture for the sake of the relationship?
It just depends on, for me at least. I believe like in a relationship there should be conversation. So if the compromise is always coming from one person, then that becomes it's not necessarily compromise, but sort of what's like your experience, where you are adjusting yourself to suit like the other person's comfortable being. So there should be compromise, but it should come from both ends, and it's it's not a thing of I don't know how to put it. Like, take for instance religion. In my case, they're just things that you should think about and go like, okay, even if you sit down, you cannot go like, okay, last time you made there's this thing like in relationships that I've seen. Like, last time I made a compromise, so whether you like it or not, this one you're supposed to compromise. You're supposed to come to my church. You know those kinds of things. So I really don't think that's the right way to do it. It should just make sense for the two of you and say, okay, this just makes sense that you compromise, and I mean, it's about finding the middle point. I guess that's the most difficult thing about relationships, right? Trying to figure out like which way to go. But in a nutshell, I just think it should come from both ends, and there should be a balance. You don't just make compromise, of course, just for the sake of doing it. And it's not just one person that's supposed to make compromise. It should come from both ends. That would be my response. But yes, there is a thin line. I think people misuse this word compromise. There's a very thin line between compromise and what's the other thing?
And like just like adopting.
And adopting. It's abused. Like, compromise is abused by some people. If it's one sided, it just becomes abuse. That's my response to that. But at the same time, I was again, going back to the Noshkish series. There's a part where the guy is I don't know what his name is. He takes I think the lady visits his home, and then they're making dinner. So the girl is in the kitchen, and she's running up and down with the mother to the guy, and then the guy and the father are just seated like in the living room. The father, I think, is reading a newspaper. The guy is on his phone, and and these guys are in Norway. The lady is like, this is a little bit questionable. You guys are just seated like in the kitchen, and the guy's response was, I do understand, like, this is not right, but it's my parents and they see this as normal. I cannot stand up and go into the kitchen. It's going to make you seem like, like it's they're not following like cultural norms. According to the parents' norms, the women are supposed to prepare like food, and the men are supposed to relax. So it's not him, like he doesn't really agree with it, but he's using the excuse of,
it's part of my couch.
yeah, like my parents. I just want to, don't want my parents to go like, oh yeah, this is not right. She's not the right woman for you, and this and that. So yeah, my question is, how do you balance up like family, especially if you come from like strong family with these cultural beliefs? Like, how do you balance that up with, I don't want to call it modern times, but just things that are normal?
Wow, that's a really good question, and it just triggered for me like when I was like younger, because now I'm older. When I'm almost 30 now, it's me being older. But I think in my early 20s, when I was like still dating around, I always used to. It always used to be in the back of my head of, will my family like him?
Exactly.
Yeah, it was kind of like, oh yeah, we go on a few dates, and I'm like, it would be like, will my family and friends like
you're
him?
just imagining.
Yeah, so to be honest, I think in relationships it should start with like you two before all the external people come up. At least that's what I've learned now. It should start with you two. You two build your own foundation, you build your own, because that's the whole thing of a relationship, especially if you're going long term. It's you two finding a way to build a life together, to coexist together.
Yeah.
So of course, family and friends' opinions matter, and culture matters, and tradition matters, but you have to find a way to make all of those different aspects of both your sides make work for your relationship. So, for example, the example that you gave, yes, respect is very important, especially when it comes to parents, or when you're in a situation where you've been invited to anywhere, even if it's like a friend's house. Respect is like very, very important. One thing I've noticed here is that there's a very good balance, or in terms of like relationship, in terms of like being in a relationship and then you have to do like chores or like anything around the house, like there's a very good balance. And mostly couples do stuff together. They would either make food together, or one of them will make food and the other person will clean up afterwards. Like it's always like a kind of like a working together system in our whole life. Yeah, and I guess it's the same thing maybe even in our tradition, because ideally it's supposed to be, ideally how at least we grew up was knowing that the man would provide and the woman would like make the home. So I guess that was kind of like the working together situation. But as you've said, like things have changed. It's modern times. These days, it's not that only one person in the household goes to work. It's both. And you would find that people are busy, and when you come home, you would definitely want to like, okay, for us to get this to get along faster, if we do it together, we get done faster, then we can sit and relax. So I think in that situation, it's best that if that's a culture that, or it's a cultural system that they've built in their home of like, oh, we work together, we're in the kitchen. I think they shouldn't change that when they go to visit whoever's parents. It's something that they should actually show, because then the parents won't learn as well.
Mm.
They will be kind of like they won't help their parents learn to be updated with the times. They might not agree. They might even voice their disagreement at times, and you go like, oh no, how we do things is this and this. But I feel as a couple in a relationship that are building your life together, you're not living with your parents, you're not living for other people. You're you're living your lives for yourselves or for each other in your relationship. So I feel like it's better to voice it out, of course, in the most respectable way. Not don't go shouting at them, reprimanding them like, hey, it's our relationship, what. I go like, oh no. We are learning to do this together, and we are learning, like, this is how we do it in our home. This is how we are planning to do it in our home. And I like helping her, or I like helping him, or I like when we do it together. Like, it's much more better. Like, show it off, like, show it so that people get the opportunity to learn and change some of these misconceptions. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the biggest hurdle, I think it's a hurdle, is where you find yourselves. I mean, for you and me, for instance, if we are trying to, adjust to to what is to the practice now, like, make adjustments and just practice how we feel a relationship is supposed to be. I feel like it's easier for you and me because we are sort of like away from like family, especially, and Zambian culture, and yeah, but for people who like are in like live with family, and it's, I feel like it's a little bit much more difficult. Even worse for people who sort of have to, people who come here, for instance, or you are a person from here and then you go to Zambia, for instance, and then there's this entire family around you that expect.
So many people around all the time.
Exactly. I feel like that's that's where the thin line, the idea with the thin line comes in, where you go like, the person is asking you to compromise, like using the word compromise loosely. It's like, oh no, can't you just compromise, because there's an entire family around you, and there's this culture that you're supposed to sort of adjust to, and they keep going like, no, just compromise.
But then, like, even in that situation, the compromising wouldn't be like a one-time thing. It's not like I'll just be compromising this one time.
Yeah,
then it would be expected of me every time.
It's
And
every time. Wow. Yeah. That's relationships for you people. So for those for you singles out there, you might start reconsidering your plans of getting into relationships.
I mean, don't reconsider. I think these are just some of the things worth thinking about, and also worth talking about. As I said, when we're doing like the talking stage and we're getting to know each other, it's all fun until you actually get to having deeper conversations with this person, and you find like, oh, this person doesn't agree with what you say, and they're not willing to even listen to your part of it, and you'll be stuck there like in that thin line of, should I compromise or am I just going to like, adopt
should
this
I
person?
compromise?
Yeah.
True. And I always feel like it's good, and that's why I love like programs like the same program that we keep referring to, the Noshkish.
Yeah.
Because it goes past like physical appearance and physical attraction. Because for the most part, these programs are always telling us that you just meet somebody and they look nice and you look nice, and you're like, oh yeah, good relationship.
And we're in a happy relationship.
And you're in a happy relationship. I'm so glad that within like the first few times of people meeting, they're showing that like cultural differences can come into play, and they are so important, if not as important as how somebody looks, or all these other things that we tend to go for when you're attracted to somebody. The like culture should be up there. And if anything, I would actually suggest that it should be one of the first things that you actually talk about, rather than not necessarily, rather than necessarily focusing. I don't know if it's necessarily or unnecessarily focusing on the things that you just like, like the good, the good stuff. Just it's always nice to have a conversation also about the most important things that you might be facing in the near future. Like talk about that stuff first, rather than you are 1 year into a relationship and then, oh yeah, you did not mention this. You did not you did not mention that you love tea in the morning and I'm supposed to make it for you.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Any questions?
I was just thinking of a controversial example.
Yeah.
when you're talking about having conversations as soon as possible.
Mm.
There's this story that somebody shared with me about their personal relationship and what happened.
Yeah.
They met this amazing person, and the dating was going fine, the dates were nice and all of that. And I don't know if after you pass like the 6 months mark or like that threshold of where like you started getting more comfortable with the person and more comfortable in your relationship, you start doing sleepovers, like you get to that stage of where like, okay, yeah, me and this person, it's on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they had like a pregnancy scare.
Oh.
Yeah, and the girl was like adamant, like, okay, if this is like for real, tomorrow morning you and me were gonna go to the hospital and I'm gonna get an abortion. And the guy was like, no, you're not. Because that's not something that I believe in.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay. And they kind of like waited for the results, and the results were like, oh yeah, we're not having a baby. And it was like, oh yeah, okay. But then this kind of like stayed in like the girl's mind. Like it was a casually passed, I don't know if I would say casual, but in the moment it was like a statement that was put out there, and it made her so uncomfortable. Like she started avoiding the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just they broke up eventually. It wasn't because of that, but after that, it's like they kind of like started seeing like the actual differences
the
in like
differences.
of the things that they would want, and but it also reminded me of the scene in the same series we're talking about, the Noshkish. They had like a similar situation, and when the test came out negative, one person was relieved, and the other person was like,
the other person was like, damn it, what's going on here?
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are I think the small things that we're referring to.
The
There we are.
differences.
Yeah, the small culture things that we are referring to, of where like, oh yeah, we both believe in this, but then I would handle it in this way and you would handle it in that way. And do we compromise, or do we learn how to like figure it out together?
Learn
Kind
how
of
to
situation.
figure it out together. Interesting stuff. Some of these things, you should, guys, learn to ask questions beforehand. You're like, what if this happens? What happens? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do get that some conversations don't come up until like you're actually in a situation where the conversation has to come up. Yeah, but I feel like I'll give an example to our relationship. I feel like long distance kind of helped us have these conversations, because we used to play a lot of games in our date nights, especially like question games, and get to know each other, and would ask each other all these weird, uncomfortable questions.
Yeah,
Maybe we should do that. I feel like now it's it's hard for us to do that anymore, because
I know, right?
feels like
Because
we've
we're
answered
always
all the
like,
questions.
it's in every time you see a question, we've tackled this one.
Yeah.
Okay, we've spoken about this, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, maybe like advice to people starting new relationships, to singles, or even people who are already in relationships. Like, if you feel like maybe you're not having those deeper conversations, or the situations have not come up.
Mm-hmm.
Play the games. There are so many online games about random questions, deeper questions for relationships, questions for couples like there are so many. They will really, really help you out. And of course, some of them will be hypothetical and you'll be like, maybe this can never happen. Just answer them either way, because
Just answer them.
it will make you as a person think about it yourself and then voice out your opinion and hear what your partner thinks.
Yeah.
And you might find that, you agree, you disagree, or you like. This is why I enjoy having conversations with you, because I always have these aha moments of like, I didn't think about it like that.
Like realizing something, right?
Yeah.
And also, like, in addition to, just playing games and finding ways of, like, getting yourselves to talk to each other. I realized this this past weekend when we had dinner with the other couples. I mean, it's not just games, but just being in a space where you find yourself speaking to like other people in relationships as well. And not just the usual where I'm like, for instance, with another guy, but where you're actually in a space where you're a couple and then you're talking to other couples and
Double dates.
yeah, as they call them. That is, it's also a way of getting, just the experiences from others and just sharing, because there are just conversations that would not come up when, like, me and you were just the two of us. But if you are having some kind of date with another couple, I mean, what else could you talk about apart from, like, couple stuff?
True.
So
That's so true.
it also helps to just find yourself in a space where you're talking to other people in relationships as couples, and it gets you talking. That way you get like a different perspective, like both positive and negative, because I've seen sometimes where people are having conversations and like, we actually do better in that in that in that
Yeah.
aspect, or that department, or whatever it might be. But it still gets you to realize things that you might not actually speak of or talk about. So just hang out with people in relationships, people.
Yes.
Yeah. Damn. This. I was checking the time, and we're only 35 minutes in.
Today you
Culture
said
is
only.
big.
Wow. Somebody is.
Because you've gotten me used to 50 minutes and 1 hour podcasts. But we've still got a couple of minutes. Anything about culture that we have not covered?
I don't know, because as I said, culture is very diverse. It's very hard to talk about diverse issues like without having like actual maybe like cases to look at. Of course, we've given a few examples here and there, and but I don't know what else to say, because I think we're trying to run away from talking about it from like if it's in an interracial couple, if it's like different nationalities and all of that. But so I don't know what else to say, because that's another different bigger part of like culture differences as well. So
there's always an argument of course we've spoken of adjusting to like modern times. And like, culture is not this static thing that people make it out to be sometimes. Like, it's something that's always the same. But is there ever a time where you lose yourself, like in the pursuit, I don't know if it's pursuit, in the pursuit of trying to adjust to modern times, you lose yourself, like, or your identity? Is there such a thing as losing your identity and just, where somebody, I think we saw this in was it the Bob and Abishola? their aunties. You know, when the lady from Nigeria came, and they thought they were Nigerian, and then she was like, "No, your pronunciation is so different. You guys are so American now," and they didn't even realize that, because sometimes you might not know how much you've changed until somebody else comes and sees. So is there ever a point where is there ever too much? Like,
Too much what? Too much culture?
no, like, for instance, is there ever a point where you can go like, I think I've adjusted too much to Norway. Like, there's too much of my Zambianness that I've lost. Like, okay, I need to,
In that
I need the
sense.
check. I need the check. I know it's, adjusting this relationship to modern times, but this is a little bit too much.
Oh, yeah. I get what you mean. And that could encompass anybody, like, not just like, us living away from like home. Yeah, even people home. I know people who have like marriages and relationships that are like way outside the norm, and people will criticize them like, oh yeah, you're running too much away from like the fundamentals of how it is. I think and a relationship that comes to mind is when we're reading Mizingamelu's book. Yeah, their relationship, I mean, from reading the book, the relationship seemed like it was way outside the norm. It was a husband who was following her all around the world and all of that. So, like, I would say that's way outside the norm of what would be deemed as, the traditional Zambian way of having a family or relationship. In terms of us,
let me give you a hint, like language, for instance. Say,
because now we try to speak a
Yeah,
little bit
exactly.
more Norwegian than like our local language and all of that. I mean, as you mentioned, the world is changing and a lot has been modernized. And as I said, I feel relationships about how we choose to kind of like navigate our way through our relationship and what we bring in and what we, check out. So I know at my core I am Zambian, and it's something that nobody can take away from me. So how I choose to be Zambian or how Zambian I am isn't measured by, I think it is measured by my life experiences or how my life trajectory has been. If I was like right now, not in Norway, and I was somewhere in the deep, deep village of Zambia, my Zambianness would probably look different than it is right now. So it's something that is hard to go like, oh, I'm losing my Zambianness, because I am Zambian. Even if I get like citizenship here or anything like that, I will still be Zambian at the core. So what looks different is how Zambian I am based on how my life trajectory has been. I cannot be whatever anybody will deem typically Zambian because I am not exposed to that on an everyday basis. So I'm not living that reality. So I don't know.
And yeah, it's I heard somebody say something the other day. It was that it's also regarding this thing of, oh yeah, you've lost your culture. Like, people choose like angles to look at behavior and traits or whatever it is that make up that make up a person. So somebody, for instance, will come up to you, like, they'll go like, oh yeah, damn, you've lost your Zambianness. You don't even speak like Bemba anymore. But then you look at this person, like, the clothes that they wear, all of them come from the US, and
all of them are made in China.
It's like, how about you? So you're saying that doesn't count, like.
Oh yeah.
So it's also like, you should not just walk up to these specifics and go like, oh yeah, it's this thing that you've lost. Like, take look at it from the top. Like, there's so much that's changing us every day. And
Yeah.
and it's not just, one thing that you can look at and go like, oh yeah, you've lost your culture and whatnot. At the end of the day, we are all changing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just, different on what exactly I guess is changing. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're all being, affected. What do you call that? Inter something. I don't know what the exact word is.
We are all intersecting.
We are all intersecting in one way or the other. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's inevitable. It's
Mm.
inevitable.
Yeah, I get that. And when you're speaking of language, I know there's been a concern in Zambia of how the children now, or what are they called? The Gen Zs, the Gen X? I have no idea, but like,
Something like
yeah,
that.
the children now not as exposed to local language as before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not everybody. I know my niece only started learning to speak Bemba, I think, when she was 10.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not as maybe even not 10. How old is her daughter? Ish, I don't even remember anymore. But
Mm.
the last time I was home, she could understand, but she couldn't speak.
She couldn't speak.
Yeah, and that's the cases with most children, because unfortunately for us in Zambia is we've kept English as the official language.
Official language.
Yeah, after colonization. Let's give you a history lesson. And it's weird when I think people find it weird when they ask me, so what's, especially now that when you're learning a different language, when you're starting to learn Norwegian, everybody wants to know like, oh yeah, so what's your mother language, what's your mother tongue?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, English is my mother tongue, because English was the language that I learned first, then came the local languages that I speak from Zambia.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I associate with a certain ethnicity group or tribe or whatever, but like my main language is English. Even like the languages that I speak, my local languages, I don't speak them fully.
It's not
I'm on intermediate.
fluently.
Yeah, it's not fluently. I'm at intermediate level of where I can communicate and understand. But
Yeah.
I'm sure if they took me to like the deep
The
source
village.
place, to the village of where people speak this language every day and they have like that lingo, I
Exactly. It was
probably
like,
wouldn't
what are they?
understand
What are they
anything.
saying here?
Yeah, so the thing of where I agree with you, of where we have to measure people just based on like certain aspects and say like, oh, you're losing your culture and all of that is it's not fair, because a lot of us, or all of us, are exposed to life differently. And this plays out in relationships as well. When because when as you've said, everybody now is like, the whole world is interconnected, so it doesn't matter if you date somebody from like your same country, your same tribe, or a different country, or different whatever. We all already have like preconceived notions, because we are exposed to the world so much. So if I was to meet somebody from China, not that I've chosen China for any particular reason, but it's just because now everybody is exposed to the whole made in China thing. So if I was to meet somebody from China and we're going to get into a relationship, I wouldn't say like, oh, I don't already have preconceived notions of like what Chinese people kind of do or are going into this. I will. And if I had to like measure that person based on like what I know and go like, you're not being Chinese enough for me, that would be very unfair because I am measuring it from that one aspect of like what I think or what I know of what being Chinese is. You get my point?
Yeah, exactly. Whew. That is a lot. That is a lot. But yeah, that is. I totally agree. I totally agree with what you just said. I actually had a point. And you know this thing where you're talking and I'm like, oh yeah, I have a point.
And then when the time comes,
Yeah,
you
when the
don't
time
remember
comes, I
them.
don't remember. I don't remember anything.
I feel you.
But again, like a counter argument, not necessarily a counter argument, but
Give us a counter argument. We shall argue.
So like something to note would be that as the world is moving forward, or as we are moving forward with our relationships and our partners, whether you are just in a relationship or you're married, um it's it's also important to, especially when it comes to language. Like um I was just reading the other day that there are languages in Zambia that that are extinct because
Oh, yeah.
like nobody ever uses them. So, but then the names are still there, like the names of the tribes, but people don't speak the languages anymore because they died out. Like I personally think that's sad. Like
Of
yeah,
course.
it's really sad. Like obviously for you and me, like in Senga and Bemba, those languages will always be there. Okay, I don't want to say they'll always be there, but in the in this time period that we live in, they'll always be there. There, the likeliness or
Of
likelihood
them
of them
fading
being
out.
extinct are almost zero. But then, yeah, it's something worth noting as well that it's okay to, I guess, adjust to modern times and things that you're comfortable with. Like we are here, we are speaking, you and me, we try to speak Norwegian at least, and we speak English, and sometimes we speak, we're speaking Nyanja and Bemba here and there.
Yeah.
It's also with, it's important to, I guess, just keep, especially when it comes to language, like, yeah, be mindful and realize that I don't know how to put this. Um, Maybe not for our languages, but for people, especially who come from like minority groups, like it's up to you. It's really up to you to, keep something that's important, and I think language is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you might be speaking Norwegian here and there, but yeah, find time to, just speak your language, and just keep it burning like that.
Is that advice for me or for
No,
other
not for
people?
other people. I mean, just as I said, for you and me, our languages are there, like they're thriving in Zambia. If somebody was to mention 5 random tribes in Zambia, I know Nsenga is going to be there, and I know Bemba is going to be there. So I'm just, saying that there are certain aspects of ourselves that would like to keep, and yeah, just it's just up to us to keep practicing it and not, expect other people to go like, oh yeah, other people are going to do it. This is important for me, but other people are going to do it. Yeah. So I don't
I
know what
agree.
my point was, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what your point is too, but I agree. I was actually thinking when you were speaking, I was like, I can't wait to go to Zambia because then we'll be able to gossip about everybody else in Norwegian.
Oh
We
my.
can be having private side conversations while
Private.
everybody's there.
We can be having private side conversations. I remember my sister once mentioned this. She was like, um, I wish, coming to Europe, I just lived in the UK. It just, it's less
Makes
stress.
it
It
easier,
feels like Zambia.
seriously.
It's less stress with,
You don't,
with
you don't,
language
you don't
and
have to
just
learn a
culture
new
and
language.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just like a modernized, modern Zambia,
Hmm.
because like the street
I wouldn't be
names and all
surprised.
of
Yeah.
that is so similar. So yeah, that is that, people. Okay. I think now we have the time. Ooh, okay. Ooh, that is a lot. That is too much. That is too much time. Any last words? Good conversation, by the way. Yeah. Do you have any advice for people getting into relationships, or people who are having problems, cultural problems in their relationships?
Uh, for people getting into relationships, I think I always tell people that are younger than me, take your time. Number one. Number two, uh, take the time to get to know each other, like the different aspects of your cultures and all those things and mannerisms and all of that. Like ask the uncomfortable questions before you dive in at the deep end and feel like, it's too late to come back. Not that, relationships are anything bad, no, but it just makes it much more worthwhile. Yeah. When you're comfortable and when you're in a comfortable space to actually get to learn about somebody. The people in relationships having trouble, guys, stop using compromise as an excuse. And also reevaluate. Yeah, reevaluate. For you, first of all, as a person, and then the relationship as a whole. Reevaluate and go like, okay, is this reconcilable or it's not reconcilable? Because I know there are people who are stuck in a loop of that loop of it's good, it's bad. They talk about it and go like, oh yeah, maybe we should adjust this, and then it works for a little bit and then it's good, it's bad. So reevaluate, and it's important to know when to walk away from certain situations. Yeah. What's your advice?
Yeah, for people obviously getting into relationships, please always remember that a human being is a full spectrum. It's
What
not
does
just
that mean, a full spectrum?
it's
Like
a
the
full
spectrum of light?
it's a full yeah, you know how light, it's a human being is white light. Like they have so many different colors. Please do not walk into a relationship admiring somebody's shoes.
Without seeing their
Because
face.
there's so much to a human being than their shoes. Please take time to get to know them, and everything about them is important, because at some point, if you don't pay attention to it, it will come back. It will come back to you 2 years, 3 years down the line. So just make sure you talk about everything, not just the things that you like about the other person, and even things that are not as important to you. Just make sure you tackle everything. It's really, really important in, just getting to know each other. Secondly, not secondly, lastly, I only have 2 points. Don't abuse, compromise. Please do not force the other person to change because you want to be comfortable. Relationships are two-way. It's a two-way thing. So if you abuse compromise, it will come out eventually. So please, 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 let us talk and enjoy each other's culture.
Yes, thank you so much for the advice.
Oh my, I know that was terrible advice, but I hope you got 1 or 2 words from that. Yes, people. Otherwise, thank you very much for a wonderful conversation, as always. And amazing. It's amazing how flawless our podcasts are now. Like no interruptions. You just press record and then everything is done. Oh my goodness. This is to the director that left that one. We don't need you anymore.
You left with all the bad juju.
It was you. I always knew it was you with the problem.
Look at us throwing shade. But otherwise, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. This has been the Diaspod, where we try to have open conversations.
Exactly. Until next week, same time, same place.
You know it.
Exactly. Diaspod people. See you again next week.
Bye.
Ha det bra.
Ha det.